Welcome to the book club, Sacred Wilds Book Club. We're on our second book, the Celestine Prophecy, which has been an epic journey, man. I missed last week, but I did catch it on or the week before, but I did catch it. We actually listened to it on the way to Mexico. It was pretty
Did
cool.
you?
Fucking technology, man.
Right? Right? You never miss anything with technology.
Not if you don't
Transcends
want to,
time and space.
but you can miss everything you don't want to. So there's this trap in that, you know.
So with all the trap talking today.
I'm in a weird space. I've been home a long time today. I got off early and I started this rabbit hole of podcasts. And
Oh man, what did you watch?
well, I'm a bunch of actually it was Greg Braden. You listen to Greg Braden at all?
Mm-mm.
Just one of the cats from like he was in What the Bleep. He's just kind of been there. He's one of those theoretical scientists, that's definitely in the metaphysical realm. And he did a podcast with this guy that I watch a lot. This is called Next Level Soul. I forget his name, but they dove deep into what's going on worldwide right now.
Hmm.
And it was crushing because well, I guess just to sum it so I don't dig into this too deep, they talked a lot more about the November 7th, that Hamas bombing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Don't go too deep. I'm not in a space to be able to receive a whole lot of that
no,
stuff.
and that's great. And that's why I don't, but it was just this context of how little we know
Mm-hmm.
and how heavy we jump into bandwagons, because like we get on board with something because we're not publicizing it, or we are publicizing it and we're completely wrong. Like
Yeah.
entire civilization of college campuses fighting for
Something
like
they have no fucking
disgusting
idea.
yeah.
When I dated, I've actually been thinking about leaving Orgasmic Oracle these last couple of days. Now I'm taking my own advice that I would give a client and make no decisions for the next 2 weeks. And there's been a lot of, I'm not coming back on social media. Anyway, I'm sidetracked. Well, I was dating a man that used to be in the military, like front lines, killed a ton of people, um, all the stuff. And I asked him once, I was like, why, what was the war about? Like, what were you fighting for? And he gave me the generic answer, right? Our freedom, our safety, and all the things. It was like, but what was threatening that?
Right, they don't know.
And he had severe PTSD, I found out. So, and he became a cop. So that's great. He could never give me an answer, but like seriously, that in and of itself is traumatizing, not knowing why you're out there, realizing after you've killed so many people that you don't even know why the fuck you were out there. Like, what?
Right, and that's the problem with what we're facing today. Is there's every culture, every community, whether it's America, Japan, China, they all censor their information that they give the public. And then so it's like the powers that be know what's going on, so they censor it to be culturally satisfying to us and to get us on their page, whatever their page is. There's no truth in any of this stuff. And
Well,
so
yeah, and it's also like pulling our attention to look at the thing that they're spreading around everywhere. What are they wanting us to not look at?
that's
Like what's going on in the background that is probably extremely visible, but we're so dynamically brought into this thing that they're waving in front of us, the bright, shiny object, that we're completely ignoring.
So that's just that whole thing. It just started there, and it's just been I just shut it off when I turned on the computer. So.
I get it now. I understand the trap conversations. All right.
We are
I'm
trapped.
just over here smiling because I have like so much shit I could say, and I'm like, you know what? Nah, because it's like that's beyond my scope. I know what you know what I mean. The what we're being fed is bullshit, and I'm like, whatever. That's why we're here. You know what I mean? Well, that's why we're going to within, because fuck
Yeah.
that. Like,
Well,
that's why we go within, you
yeah.
know?
And that's why I don't want to go back on social media. Like,
Man,
I've thought about
I
that for the
struggle with
last
that,
2
though.
days. Like
Struggle.
the thought of going on social media just makes my entire body
Right.
like,
Don't do it.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't
There you
intend to.
go.
I know.
Don't do it.
And my body's doing a very similar thing, thinking about going on to Orgasmic Oracle. I haven't gone on there.
Mm.
Just because, like, and anyway, but yeah, I mean, the space served me fucking beautifully, and it may still. I don't know. Like I said, I'm gonna give it a couple weeks, but
Right. Well, and then on the whole
shock
nother
to my
note,
nervous system.
I chatted with you a little bit, but we've made some good headway on the men's group. I think we're gonna
Yeah.
Yes.
talk to Corey today on the phone, so he's super excited. He wants to get involved. Jeremy wants to get involved. So the four of us, I don't know, the three of us anyway, are gonna set up a time to just meet on Zoom, and then we'll try to figure out a good time for us to meet. Because Corey kind of wants to do a little bit more in person.
Yeah.
Told him I'd like to be in person too, but I'd like to keep it both. I'd like to, A, then it's recorded, B, then if we're out of town, we can join in, so we can keep it versatile that way. And I told him, I've done this in many different directions, from church to AA to every form of men's group. And we can do things like just read a book and talk and communicate that way, or we can just dig into each other's souls. And he's like, dude, I'm ready to dig.
Dude,
So
I've got a couple of fucking books that are about I think it's called The Hidden Spirituality of Men, is a book that I've been really fucking wanting to get into. And like the second you said that, I was like, bro, why don't I mean, we'll talk more. I know this is not what this is about, but I'm like fucking I'm so down, right? Right? You're right. So, but yeah,
back to the book club.
right.
The Celestine Prophecy. We are on page 150. Oh, wait, that's my old page. So we're not there. What page?
164.
164.
Get a kick out of that, huh?
Oh, wow. Right? It's bullshit, because that's never mind.
We won't go into that, but those that know.
Right. So where are we at?
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, hold on, just a
mark
bad
my
drink.
spot. I didn't mark my spot.
Hold on. Happened in the dream. It's a current. No, we didn't get that far.
I'll just start up at the top. How about that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's where we were, honestly.
I sat up quickly in my cot, gasping for air. The young Indian, apparently already awake, walked over to me. "What's wrong?" he asked. I caught my breath and looked around, realizing where I was. I also noticed that the room had a window and that it was already light outside. "Just had a bad dream," I said. He smiled at me, though he was pleased with what I said. "Bad dreams have the most important messages," he commented. "Messages?" I asked, getting up and putting my shirt on. He looked embarrassed, having to explain. The seventh insight talks of dreams," he said. "What does it say about dreams?" "It tells us how to interpret dreams?" "Yes." "What does it say about that?" "It says to compare the story of a dream to the story of your life." I thought for a moment, unsure of what that instruction meant. "What do you mean, compare stories?" The young Indian could barely look at me in the eye. "Do you want me to interpret your dream?" I nodded and told him what I had experienced. He listened intently, then said, "Compare parts of the story with your life." I looked at him. "Where do I start?" "At the beginning." "What are you doing at the beginning of the dream?" "I was searching for a key in the forest." "How did you feel?" "Lost." "Compare the situation to your real situation." "Maybe it does relate," I said. "I'm looking for some answers about this manuscript, and I'm damn sure feeling lost." "And what else is happening to you in real life?" he asked. "I've been caught," I said. "In spite of everything I tried to do, I've been locked up. All I can hope for now is to talk someone into letting me go home. You are struggling against being caught. Of course. What happened in the next dream? I fought against the current. Why? He asked. I began to pick up where he was headed, because at the time I thought it would drown me. And if you hadn't fought the water, it would have carried me to the key. What are you saying? That if I didn't fight against the situation, that I might still get the answers I want? He looked embarrassed again. I'm not saying anything. The dream is saying. I thought for a moment. Was this interpretation correct? The young Indian looked up at me, then asked, if you had experienced the dream again, what would you do different? I wouldn't resist the water, even though it looked as though it might kill me. I would know better. What is threatening you now? I guess the soldiers being detained. So what is the message to you? You think the message of the dream is to look at this capture positively? He didn't answer. He only smiled. I was sitting on my cot, leaning back against the wall. The interpretation excited me. If it was accurate, it would mean that I hadn't made a mistake at the crossroads after all, and that this was all part of what should be happening. What is your name? I asked. Pablo, he said. I smiled and introduced myself, then briefly told him the story of why I was in Peru and what had happened. Pablo was sitting on his cot, his elbows resting on his knees. He had short, black hair and was very thin. Why are you here? He asked. To find out about this manuscript, I replied. Why specifically? He asked again. To find out about the seventh insight and to find out about some friends, Will and Marjorie. And I guess to find out why the church is so against the manuscript. There are many priests here to talk to, he said. I thought about his statement for a moment and then asked, what else does the seventh insight say about dreams? Pablo told me that the dreams come tell us something about our lives that we were missing. Then he said something else, but instead of listening, I started to think about Marjorie. I could see her face clearly in my mind, and I wondered where she might be. Then I saw her running up to me smiling. Suddenly, I became aware that Pablo was no longer talking. I looked over at him. Sorry, my mind was wandering, I said. What were you saying? That's all right, he replied. What were you thinking about? Just a friend of mine. It was nothing. He looked as though he wanted to press the question, but someone was approaching the cell door. Through the bars, we could see a soldier sliding back the bolt lock. Time for breakfast, Pablo said. The soldier opened the door and motioned with his head for us to walk into the hall. Pablo led the way down the stone corridor. We proceeded to a stairway and up one flight of stairs into a small dining area. 4 or 5 soldiers stood at the corner of the room while several civilians, 2 men and women, and a woman, waited in a line to be served. I stopped, not believing my eyes. The woman was Marjorie. Simultaneously, she saw me, cover her mouth with her hand, her eyes opening wide with surprise. I glanced at the soldier behind me. He was walking toward the other military men in the corner, smiling nonchalantly and saying something in Spanish. I followed Pablo as he led us across the room and to the end of the line. And I'll pass.
Marjorie was being served. The 2 other men took their trays to the table, talking. Several times Marjorie gazed over and met my eyes, struggling not to say anything. After the second glance, Pablo guessed that we knew each other and looked at me questioningly. Marjorie carried her food to a table, and after being served, we walked over and sat with her. The soldiers were still talking among themselves, seemingly oblivious to our movements. God, I'm glad to see you, she said. How did you get here? I hid for a while with some priests, I replied. Then I left to find Will and was captured yesterday. How long have you been here? Since they found me on the ridge, she said. I noticed Pablo was looking at us intensely, and I introduced him to Marjorie. I guess that this must be Marjorie, he said. They talked briefly, then I asked Marjorie, what else has happened? Not much, she said. I don't even know why I'm being detained. Every day I've been taken to one of the priests or to one of the officers for questioning. They want to know who my contacts were in Vicente, and if I know where any of the copies are, over and over again. Marjorie smiled and looked vulnerable, and when she did, I felt another strong attraction to her. She looked at me sharply, out of the corner of her eyes. We both laughed quietly. A period of silence followed as we ate our food, and then the door opened, and in walked a priest, dressed formally. He was accompanied by a man appearing to be a high-ranking military officer. That's the head priest, Pablo said. The officer said something to the soldiers who had snapped to attention, and then he and the priest walked across the room toward the kitchen. The priest looked directly at me, our eyes meeting for a long second. I looked away and took a bite of food, not wanting to attract attention. Both men continued through the kitchen and out a door there. Was that one of the priests you've talked to? I asked Marjorie. No, Marjorie said. I've never seen him. I know that priest, Pablo said. He arrived yesterday. His name is Cardinal Sebastian. I sat up straight. That was Sebastian? It sounds like you've heard of him, Marjorie said. I have, I replied. He's the main priest behind the church's opposition to the manuscript. I thought he was at Father Sanchez's mission. Who is Father Sanchez? Marjorie asked. I was about to tell her when the soldier who had escorted us walked over to the table, mentioned for Pablo and me to follow. Time for exercise, Pablo said. Marjorie and I looked at each other. Her eyes revealed an inner anxiety. Don't worry, I said. I'll talk to you at the next meal. Everything will be fine. As I walked away, I wondered if my optimism was realistic. These people could make any of us disappear without a trace at any time. The soldier guided us into a short hall and through a door that led to an outside stairway. We walked down to a side yard, which was surrounded by a tall rock wall. The soldier stood by the entrance. Pablo nodded for me to walk with him around the borders of the yard. As we walked, Pablo bent down several times to pick up some flowers growing in the beds by the wall. What else does the seventh insight say? I asked. He bent down and picked another flower. It says that not only dreams guide us, also thoughts or daydreams guide us. Yes, Father Carl said that. Tell me how daydreams. Sorry. What was that? It says that not only dreams guide us, also thoughts or daydreams guide us. Yes, Father Carl said that. Tell me how daydreams guide us. They show us a scene, a happening, and this is an indication that this event might happen. If we pay attention, then we can be ready for this turn in our lives. I looked at him. You know, Pablo, an image came to me that I would run into Marjorie. Then I did. He smiled. A chill went up my spine. I must indeed be in the right place. I had intuited something that had come true. I had thought several times of finding Marjorie again, and now it had happened. The coincidences were taking place. I felt lighter. I'm gonna pass. But that is so true.
Isn't it like,
It's so true.
and it goes back to the first part that we read, where he was like, well, if I would have stopped fighting against the current and just let the current take me, I would have gotten the key. Right? So how many things do we fight against that if we just let go, if we just fucking surrender and go with the flow of it, trust, like, me fighting against the ending of my relationship with Steve. I fought fucking hard to keep that relationship going. Right? But when I finally fucking let it go, that's when my life just fucking blossomed.
Mm.
And the coincidences, right? Forgot who one of the kids was like, deja vu. I was like, it's perfect. I heard a piece that was like, it means that we remember the life that we planned before we got here.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a moment of remembering.
Yep.
I don't have thoughts like that happen very often, I said. Pablo looked away, then said, the seventh insight says that we all have many more such thoughts than we realize. To recognize them, we must take an observer position. When a thought comes, we must ask why. Why did this particular thought come now? How does it relate to my life questions? Taking this observer position helps us release our need to control everything. It places us in the flow of evolution.
Hmm.
But what about negative thoughts? I asked. Those fear images of something bad happening, such as someone we love getting hurt, or of not achieving something we very much want. Very simple, Pablo said. The seventh insight says that fear images should be halted as soon as they come. Then another image, one with a good outcome, should be willed through the mind. Soon, negative images will almost never happen. Your intuitions will be about positive things. When negative images come after that, the manuscript says they should be taken very seriously and not followed. For instance, if the idea comes to you that you're going to have a wreck in a truck and someone comes along and offers you a ride in a truck, then do not accept it. We had come full circle in our walk around the courtyard and were approaching the guard. Neither of us talked as we passed him. Pablo picked a flower and I took a deep breath. The air was warm and humid, and the plant life outside the wall was dense and tropical. I had noticed several mosquitoes. Come, the soldier suddenly called out. He prodded us inside and down to our cell. Pablo entered ahead of me, but the soldier put his arm up, blocking my way. Not you, he said, then nodded for me to walk down the hallway and up the other steps and outside through the same door we had entered the night before. In the parking lot, Father Sebastian was entering the back seat of a large car. A driver shut the door behind him. For an instant, Sebastian looked at me again. Then he turned and said something to the driver. The car sped away. The soldier nudged me toward the front of the building. We walked inside and into an office. I was directed to sit in a wooden chair across from a white metal desk. Within minutes, a small sandy-haired priest of about 30 entered and sat at the desk without acknowledging my presence. He looked through a file for a full minute, then looked up at me. His round, gold-rimmed glasses produced an intellectual appearance. You've been arrested with illegal state documents, he said matter-of-factly. I'm here to help determine whether persecution is in order. I would appreciate your cooperation. I nodded. Where did you get the translations? I don't understand, I said. Why would copies of an old manuscript be illegal? The government of Peru has its reasons, he said. Please answer the question. Why is the church involved? I asked. Because the manuscript contradicts the traditions of our religion, he said. It misinterprets the truth of our spiritual nature. Look, I said, interrupting, I'm just trying to understand this. I'm just a tourist who got interested in this manuscript. I'm a threat to no one. I only want to know why it is so alarming. He looked puzzled, as if trying to decide the best strategy for dealing with me. It was consciously pressing for details. The church feels the manuscript is confusing to our people, he said carefully. It gives the impression that people can decide on their own how to live without regard to the scriptures. Which scriptures? The commandment to honor thy father and mother, for one. What do you mean? The manuscript blames problems on parents, undermining the family. I thought it spoke of ending old resentments, I said, and finding positive view of our early life. No, he said, it is misleading. There should never have been a negative feeling to begin with. Wow. Can't parents be wrong? Parents do the best they can. Children must forgive them. But isn't that what the manuscript is clarifying? Doesn't forgiveness take place when we see the positive about our childhoods? Did you say something, Paul?
No, I'm just giggling.
Oh,
Right.
Fucking ridiculous. But this is what we live. I mean,
This is what we were just talking about.
this is
Yeah.
no different in America than it is in Peru. I mean,
yeah. It's the same thing, just different stories, different words, different
yeah.
environments.
And if we go against the powers that be, i.e. the church,
Yes.
bound to fucking get in trouble.
Well, I mean, like, I have so many friends that used to live the Mormon life and had to leave. And I mean, Carrie, there's a number of people. And like they literally have to walk away from everything.
Everything.
They can't keep any semblance of that life. It's not welcome.
Mhm.
What a like, what a fucking courageous thing to do first,
Yeah.
right? And it's just,
Well, it's funny because I mean I very distinctly remember my first dive into social media and getting all the questions from all of the family and friends. What about Christ? What about this? What about, and then all of a sudden no one talked to me ever again. Like that was 15, 20 years ago. And now the same shift has happened in Alcoholics Anonymous. So it's not even religious views. It's human built constructs that if you don't fit my mold, then you're wrong and you're gonna hurt me or whatever the case.
well, it's then you're gonna challenge my stronghold on my reality.
On my
And
belief
if
system.
you challenge my reality, then what is there?
Right. Right. It's all the pride, it's all the ego based stuff.
It is. It's that fear of it. This is a lot. So it like goes to this, well, if you're right, then I have to be wrong. And if I'm right, then you have to be wrong. When the reality is we're all fucking right and we're all fucking wrong.
Right. And again, this goes back to a statement we made a few weeks ago about the what was the oh fuck. All I don't remember, but about just about misinterpretation. All
Oh, all confrontation is confusion.
is confusion.
Right.
And we were actually talking about that a lot today because that Greg Braden stuff started triggering a lot of stuff between Stacy and I, and just in conversation. And I came to this conclusion that the end of all this is when there is no more sides.
Yeah.
And she couldn't get on board with that because there will always be sides. And I'm like, well, there's only sides because of miscommunication. Because I've had some in-depth conversation with super fucking liberal people and super conservative people. And the more we talk, the more we get past the confusion. We want the same thing. We agree
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yes.
So it's until there's no more sides, there's gonna be no peace.
And like the fighting, the combativeness, the wars, all of it comes from the same fucking feeling too. Like at the bottom of it, like that was one of the biggest things that I came to really, really realize when I was holding space for people in Orgasmic Oracle that are living through the genocide and all of that is like, I don't have to know what to say. I don't have to fucking know what you're going through. I don't have to be there with you. Like we all share that same fucking core despair, the core fear, the core grief of a safe place turned unsafe.
Right.
Like we all know what that is.
Mhm.
And instead of and like yeah, it's all the fucking same. It's all the same.
Just
We're
confused.
just running around blind and deaf
Mhm.
because we're hearing the words instead of the intention behind them.
Right. Or we're not actually hearing at all.
Not
Mhm.
hearing it
Just
all.
We're
thinking
wanting
of,
to be heard.
yeah. Instead of actively listening to people and engaging in conversation, the walls come up. I see it all the time with, like you said, conservatives, liberals, can you name it, Christians, Muslims. You know what I mean? Like, you're wrong, I'm right. You need to listen to what I have to say, period. Because I'm right and you're wrong. And it's like they're just like you said, dude, fucking walls got to come down. But
There's got to be no more sides.
right.
And yeah, like that's the whole essence of the round table. Like
Mhm.
we all have a different piece to the same fucking puzzle, but we're fighting thinking that the piece is the puzzle itself. So if my piece of the puzzle is right, then yours has to be wrong.
Right.
Right? When it's no, let's all fucking sit at the table together, man.
Connected, bro.
Let's put it all together. Put it all together.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna pass. So it's your turn.
You were at
No.
Doesn't forgiveness take place when we see the positive about our childhoods? Ooh,
Oh, yeah.
wow. That was, wow, that was good.
his voice rose with anger. But from what authority does this manuscript speak? How can it be trusted? He walked around the desk and stared down at me, still angry. You don't know what you're talking about, he said. You are a religious scholar. Or are you a religious scholar? I think not. Your direct evidence of the kind of confusion this manuscript evokes. You don't understand that there is order in the world only because of law and authority? How can you question the authorities in this matter? I said nothing, which seemed to infuriate him even more. Let me tell you something, he said. The crime you have committed is punishable by years in prison. Have you ever been in a Peruvian prison? Does your Yankee courtesy yearn to find out what our prisons are like? I can arrange that. Do you understand? I can arrange that. He put his hand over his eyes and paused, taking a deep breath, obviously trying to calm down. I'm here to find out who has copies, where they are coming from. I will ask you one more time. Where did you get your translations? His outburst had filled me with anxiety. I was making my situation worse with all my questions. What might he do if I failed to cooperate? Still, how could I implicate Father Sanchez and Father Carl? I need some time before I answer you, I said. Momentarily, he looked as if he might fly into another rage. Then he relaxed and looked very tired. I will give you until tomorrow morning, he said, motioning for the soldier standing in the doorway to take me away. I followed the soldier back down the hall and directly to the cell. Without saying anything, I walked over and lay down on my cot, feeling exhausted myself. Pablo was looking out the barred window. Did you talk to Father Sebastian? He asked. No, it was another priest. He wanted to know who gave me the copies I had. What did you say? Nothing. I asked for time to think, and he gave me until tomorrow. Did he say anything about the manuscript? Pablo asked. I looked into Pablo's eyes, and this time he did not lower his head. He talked a little about how the manuscript undermines traditional authority, I said. Then he started raving and threatening me. Pablo looked genuinely surprised. Did he have brown hair and round glasses? Yes. His name is Father Costos, Pablo said. What else did you say? I disagreed with him on whether the manuscript undermines traditions, I replied. He threatened me with prison. Do you think he meant that? I don't know, Pablo said. He walked over and sat on his cot across from me. I could tell he had something else on his mind, but he was so tired and scared that I closed my eyes. When I awoke, Pablo was shaking me. Time for lunch, he said. We followed the guard upstairs, and were served a plate of gristly beef and potatoes. The two men who we saw earlier came in after us. Marjorie wasn't with them. Where's Marjorie? I asked, trying to whisper. The two men looked horrified that I would speak to them, and the soldiers stared at me intensely. I don't think they spoke English, Pablo said. They speak English, Pablo said. I wonder where she is, I said. Pablo said something in response again, but I wasn't listening. I suddenly felt like running away and was picturing myself fleeing down a street of some kind, then ducking through a doorway to freedom. What are you thinking about? Pablo asked. I was fantasizing about an escape, I said. What were you saying? Wait, Pablo said. Don't dismiss your thought. It may be important. What kind of escape? I was running down an alley or a street, then through a doorway. I got the impression I was successfully escaping. What do you think of this image? Pablo asked. I don't know, I said. It didn't seem to be logically connected to what we were talking about. Do you remember what we were talking about? Yes, I was asking about Marjorie. You don't think there is a connection between Marjorie and your thought? Not an obvious link I can think of. What about a hidden link? I can see a connection. How could escaping be related to Marjorie? Do you think she escaped? He looked thoughtful. Your thought was of you escaping. Oh, yeah, that's right, I said. Maybe I'm going to escape without her. I looked at him. Maybe I'm going to escape with her. That would be my guess, he said. But where is she? I don't know. We finished eating without talking. I was hungry, but the food seemed too heavy. For some reason, I felt tired and sluggish. My hunger left me quickly. I noticed Pablo wasn't eating either. I think we should go back to the cell, Pablo said. I nodded. He motioned the soldier to take us back. When we arrived, I stretched out on my cot and Pablo sat looking at me. Your energy seems down, he said. It is, I replied. I'm not sure what's wrong. Are you trying to take in energy? He asked. I guess I haven't, I replied, and the food doesn't help. But you don't need much food if you are taking everything in. He swept his arm in front of him to emphasize everything. I know it's hard for me to get the love flowing in a situation like this. He looked at me quizzically. But do not, but not to do so is to harm yourself. What do you mean? Your body is vibrating at a certain level. If you let your energy get too low, your body suffers. That is the relationship between stress and disease. Love is the way we keep our vibration up. It keeps us healthy. It is that important. Give me a few minutes, I said. I practiced the method Father Sanchez had taught me. Immediately, I felt better. The objects around me stood without or with presence. I closed my eyes and concentrated on the feeling. That's good, he said. I opened my eyes and saw him smiling broadly at me. His face and body were still boyish and immature, but his eyes now seemed full of wisdom. I can see the energy coming into you, he said. I could detect a slight field of green around Pablo's body. The new flowers he had placed in the vase on the table seemed radiant. To grasp the seventh insight and truly enter the moment of evolution, he said, one must pull all the insights into one way of being. I didn't say anything. Can you sum up how the world has changed for you as a result of the insights? I thought for a moment. I guess I've woken up and seen the world as a mysterious place that provides everything we need. If we get clear and get on the path. Then what happens? He asked. Then we're ready to begin the evolutionary flow. And how do we engage this process? I thought for a moment. By keeping our current life questions firmly in mind, I said, and then watching for direction, either in a dream or in an intuitive thought or in the way the environment illuminates and jumps out at us. And I will pass.
Like, what if we were that aware, that present? Like, how many times do we allow these thoughts to just pass us by? How many times do we see like a plant or a path or a choice or a person that it just is light, that's lighter than everything else, but we just ignore that. We don't pay any attention to that. Like, what if we allowed ourselves to be that present and pay that much attention and let that guide us? Like, that's how I chose this job that I'm in. I had 2 job offers. One of them made me feel just tight and closed, and then this one made me feel light and easy. So that's the one that I chose. And then here I am.
Not
Like,
wanting to be there.
I know, right? It's that just forever unhappy. I just don't want to fucking work anymore. Not this work anyway.
Right.
But it's really
I think
not as
that's
bad today.
I think that's the purpose of life, right? Is to stop fighting and to just go with the flow. I've known that since I was a little kid. And
Mhm.
I've fought and it was like in the beginning of the book with the control dramas and and trying to follow the rules of the family or the rules of the church or the rules of AA and not Paul's rules. I've always tried to follow somebody else's rules. And it's taken a lifetime to get to this place where I'm following my own fucking rules. And sometimes that doesn't sit well with people. And those people fall apart or fall off and the rules fall in place. What?
Preach! Preach, bro! Because you're saying exactly what I was thinking. Please continue.
No, that's the reality of where we're at and why we're here. Why we keep showing up, why people keep showing up, why people haven't gone away. You know what I mean? It's just like there's this constant fight, which doesn't need to be a fight. I need to let go and accept and just keep flowing with keeping that flow space. Aubrey Marcus talks about it all the time, being in flow space, you know?
I mean, the flow genome, they have the whole flow genome project that Mihai Csikszentmihalyi was the person who identified the flow genome. And then you have Jamie Wheal and Stephen Kotler who created the flow genome project. And it's a genome that we have that gets activated and gets us into flow. And there's a biohack you can do. If you drink a cup of coffee, go for a 20-minute run, and then smoke a joint, you activate your flow genome. You can also do it by doing extreme sports, getting into those extreme sports, or like jazz musicians, they call it the pocket, or if surfers, you know, when they're riding the wave, like they get into that flow space also. It's where our brain doesn't have to think. We don't have to do, we just like be.
It's the name of it.
With we make those decisions.
Engaging the flow is the name of the chapter.
Oh, there you go.
Until right now.
I like when he said, I can see the energy coming into you.
Yeah.
Because like that's something that I've been striving for. You know what I mean? Is just to be aware of the energy, to feel the energy, to be intuitive in myself enough to know when this is the right direction. I've been doing it for the past year, and I'm just barely scratching the surface where it feels like, okay, this feels right. You know what I mean? Like when I started listening, like we were talking about, like when I started listening to me, following my own fucking rules, my own fucking path. This is what I want to do. You know what I mean? What's better for me? Like that's when my life started changing and changing.
And what's super cool about that, at least where I'm sitting today, is I know exactly what got me right here. You know what I mean? I can lay out the path. But instead of trying to, Anthony, you need to go to Kundalini, you need to do this, you need to do that. No, you need to find your flow.
Yes.
And let's flow together. You know what I mean?
Like right fucking there.
That's the magic.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I don't know what the fuck you need.
Right.
I have no idea what you need at all. I don't want to know what you need. Like, it's for me to choose for myself, to give myself what I need and hold that reflection to you, giving you permission to do the same fucking thing.
Right.
In your own unique way.
Yeah.
Because we're all fucking different. We've all lived different lives. We all have different traumas. We've all experienced different healing. And what works for me doesn't necessarily work for you. It can, but it doesn't have to. And that doesn't mean what I did was wrong or bad or not good or whatever.
But I don't have to be right. Like that's the magic. Is it's come to this place where it's not about being wrong or right. This is what's worked for me.
It just is.
And I don't care what you do, you need to find what's going to work for you. It's going to take some fucking work. You know, it's going to take some effort. And fentanyl is not the answer. It's like I've been dealing with Jeff. I know I have all the answers for him, but I have no answers for him. Like, dude, you got to find your own path. I'll tell you right now, fentanyl is not it, but
the universe only gives us exactly what we need to make the next right choice.
Right.
Steve was what I needed to make the next right choice.
Right.
And before that, the universe gave me Danny. Before that, the universe gave me a number of men that, you know, slowly escalated until it got loud enough to where I could hear it. You know, and so it may not be the path or the thing that is light and easy and fun, but it's exactly what he needs right now.
Right.
Brutal.
That's what sucks. Is sometimes
Yeah.
we need to, it just because it's so loud, I might need it to be worse, you know?
Yeah. I mean, look at for my mom. It took my stepdad. It took her getting beat, raped, and her daughter being chased with a shotgun at 5 years old for her
Right.
to get out. You know, thankfully it didn't take that tip for me, you know.
Right.
But and in that same space, in that same breath, like it's all perfect.
It's all perfect. Yeah.
I wouldn't be who I am without those experiences.
Yeah.
I wouldn't live the life that I'm living with the people that I'm living it with the fucking experience of love and bliss and beauty that I get right now
Right.
without that. That's the other fucking paradoxical mind fuck, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a fucking trip.
I die so I can live.
Ugh. Shall we
There's
keep going?
4 or 5 more pages till the end of the chapter. Do we want to push through in 10 minutes?
Let's do it.
Me or you?
There you go.
Split it up if you want.
Where were we?
I
You
paused
did-
again.
Oh, I
Oh, I
paused
thought-
again. Yep.
Oh wow. I was okay. I paused again, trying to pull the whole insight together, then added, we build our energy and center ourselves in our situations and the questions we have. Then we receive some form of intuitive guidance, an idea of where to go or what to do, and then coincidences occur to allow us to move in that direction. Yes, yes, Pablo said. This is the way. God, I love that. This is the way. And each time that these coincidences lead us into something new, we grow. We become fuller persons, existing at a higher vibration. He was leaning towards me, and I noticed an incredible energy around him. He was beaming, no longer appearing shy or even young. He seemed full of power. Pablo, what has happened to you? I asked. Compared to when I first met you, you seem more confident and knowledgeable and full somehow. He laughed. When you first came, I had allowed my energy to dissipate. At first, I thought you might be able to help me with my energy flow, but I realized that you haven't learned to do this yet. That ability is learned in the 8th insight. I was puzzled. But what is it that I didn't do? Wait, what was it that I didn't do? You must learn that all the answers that mysteriously come to us really come from other people. Think about all that you have learned since you have been in Peru. Haven't all the answers come to you through the actions of other people you mysteriously met? I thought about it. He was right. I had met just the right people at the right time. Charlene, Dobson, Will, Dale, Marjorie, Phil, Renault, Father Sanchez, and Father Carl, and now Pablo. Even the manuscript was written by a person, Pablo added. But not all the people you meet will have the energy or the clarity to reveal the message they have for you. You must help them by sending them energy. He paused. You told me of learning to project your energy toward a plant by focusing on its beauty, remember? Yes. Well, you do exactly the same thing toward a person. When the energy goes into them, it helps them see their truth. Then they can give this truth to you. Father Costas is an example. Costas. He continued. He had an important message for you which you did not help him reveal. You tried to demand answers from him, and that created a competition between you and him for energy. When he felt that, his childhood drama, his intimidator, took over the conversation. What was I supposed to have said? I asked. Pablo didn't answer. Do you want to?
No, go.
Oh, okay. Pablo didn't answer. Again, we heard someone at the cell door. Father Costas entered. He nodded at Pablo, a slight smile on his face. Pablo smiled broadly, as if he actually liked the priest. Father Costas shifted his gaze to me, his face becoming stern. Anxiety gripped my stomach. Cardinal Sebastian has asked to see you, he said. You will be transported to Iquitos this afternoon. I would advise you to answer all his questions. Why does he want me? I asked. Because the truck you were caught with belongs to one of our priests. We are assuming you received your copies of the manuscript from him. For one of our own priests to disregard the law is very serious. He looked at me with determination. I glanced at Pablo, who nodded for me to continue. You think that the manuscript is undermining your religion? I asked Costas gently. He looked at me with condescension. Not just our religion, everyone's religion. Do you think there is no plan for this world? God is in control. He assigns our destiny. Our job is to obey the laws set forth by God. Evolution is a myth. God creates God creates a future the way he wants it. To say humans can make themselves evolve takes the will of God out of the picture. It allows people to be selfish and separate. They think that their evolution is the important thing, not God's plan. They will treat each other even worse than they do now. I couldn't think of another question. The priest looked at me for a moment, then said almost kindly, I hope you will cooperate with Cardinal Sebastian. He turned and looked at Pablo, obviously proud of the way he had handled my questions. Pablo only smiled at him and nodded again. The priest walked out, and a soldier locked the door behind him. Pablo leaned forward on his cot and beamed at me, his demeanor still completely transformed, confidence on his face. I looked at him for a moment, then smiled. What do you think happens just now? He asked. I struggled for humor. I found out I'm in more trouble than I thought. He laughed. What else occurred? I'm not sure what you're getting at. What were your questions when you arrived here? I wanted to find Marjorie and Will. Well, you found one of them. What was your other question? I had a sense that these priests were against the manuscript, not out of malice, but because they misunderstood. I wanted to know what they were thinking. Wow. For some reason, I had the idea they could be talked out of their opposition. After saying this, I suddenly understood what Pablo was leading to. I had met Costas here, now, so that I could find out what bothered him about the manuscript. And what was the message you received, he asked. The message? Yes, the message. I looked at him. It's the idea of participating in evolution that bothers them, isn't it? Yes, he said. That would figure, I added. The idea of physical evolution is bad enough, but to extend the idea to everyday life, to the individual decisions we make, to history itself, that's unacceptable. They think humans will run amok with this evolution, that relations between people will degenerate. No wonder they want to see the manuscript suppressed. Could you convince them otherwise? Pablo asked. No, I mean, I don't know enough myself. What would it take for someone to be able to convince them? One would have to know the truth. One would have to know how humans would be treating each other if everyone was following the insights and evolving. Pablo appeared pleased. What? I asked, smiling along with him. How humans will act toward each other is in the very next insight, the 8th. Your question of why the priests were against the manuscript has been answered. And the answer, in turn, has evolved into another question. Yes, I said, deep in thought. I've got to find the 8th. I've got to get out of here. Don't go too fast, Pablo cautioned. You must make sure you fully grasp the 7th before you go further. Do you think I grasp it? I asked. Am I staying in the flow of evolution? I'm going to pass.
You will, he said, if you remember to keep your questions always in mind. Even people who are still unaware can stumble into answers and see coincidences in retrospect. The 7th insight occurs when we can see these answers as they arrive. It heightens everyday experience. We must assume every event has significance and contains a message that somehow pertains to our questions. This especially applies to what we use to call bad things. The 7th insight says that the challenge is to find the silver lining in every event, no matter how negative. You first thought that being captured had ruined everything, but now you can see that you were supposed to be here. This is where your answers are. He was right, but if I was receiving answers here and evolving to a higher level, then Pablo must certainly be doing the same thing. Suddenly, we heard someone coming down the hall. Pablo looked directly at me, a serious look on his face. Listen, he said, remember what I told you. The 8th insight is next for you. It is about an interpersonal ethic, a way of treating other people so more messages are shared. But remember not to go too fast. Stay centered in your situation. What are your questions? I want to find out where Will is, I said, and I want to find the 8th insight, and I want to find Marjorie. And what was your guiding intuition concerning Marjorie? I thought for a moment that I would escape, that we would escape. We could hear someone right outside the door. Did I bring you a message? I asked Pablo hurriedly. Of course, he said. When you arrived, I didn't know why I was here. I knew it had something to do with communicating the 7th insight, but I doubted my ability. I didn't think that I knew enough. Because of you, he continued, I now know that I can. That was one of the messages that you brought to me. Was there another? Yes, your intuition with the priests can be convinced to that the priest can be convinced to accept the manuscript as a message for me also. It makes me think I'm here to convince Father Costas. As he finished speaking, a soldier opened the door and motioned for me. I looked at Pablo. I want to tell you one of the concepts the next insight talks about, he said. The soldier glared at him and took my arm, ushering me out the door and closing it. As I was led away, Pablo stared through the bars. The 8th insight warns against something, he called out. It warns against your growth being stopped. It happens when you become addicted to another person.
Ooh.
Damn.
Boom, boom, boom.
Ain't that some shit?
Damn.
Right?
Damn.
I love this book so much.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot here. There is definitely a lot here.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm curious it's been so long since I read it. I'm curious to see how they describe addiction.
That's coming next chapter, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Wow.
I know, it's wild. I had this like super deep contemplation at 1 o'clock this morning when I woke up for like 2 hours just on the difference between codependency and connection, and the difference between vulnerability and attachment.
Ooh.
Yeah, it
Huh.
was super wild. And it all has to do with a very simple difference. One of them is do this for me so I don't have to. And the other one is teach me how to do this through our experience of each other.
Right.
Two very different things, right? But very simple. Yeah.
That would be interesting. Right
Mhm.
on. Well, another great evening digging
Right.
into the Celestine Prophecy or digging into life. Fuck.
Mhm.
Right? Like that's I'm still getting caught up with the where we're at. Like I love that I'm reading more into it because it keeps me engaged, but like yeah.
Oh, you
It's
backing up? Did you back up?
no, I just got the book tonight, but I've been watching, yeah.
That's what I mean. You've been watching the past ones?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah,
It's
no,
fucking cool, man.
it's a fucking epic ride, man. That's for
Right.
sure.
Told you guys. Called it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Good call. Well, thank you for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
Meet again next Wednesday, 6:30.